Cool. Thanks, Georgia. Hey, everyone. So my name's Shami, and I'll be talking to you about managing that whole silver bullet mentality with regards to security tools. So we've seen a lot of security tools out there now, and you'd have seen some throughout the day and also talked about. So we have security tools now for managing and monitoring our networks. We have security tools for controlling what happens to our data and where it goes. Security tools for protecting ourselves from viruses, security tools for helping us deal with incidents more effectively, and security tools for dealing with intrusions. So organizations may have one, most, or all of these tools in place, and the defense in depth that these solutions provides adds additional layers of security and helps us to prevent cyber attacks from occurring more frequently and more easily. There's a lot of reasons why organizations move to using security tools to protect their businesses. And one of the common ones we see is reacting to what happens on the news in terms of other organizations that fall victim to cyber attacks. So we're hearing a lot more about these across New Zealand now. And it just pushes people to think about using security tools so that they don't become the next hot piece on the news. The other is that cybersecurity is a growing and a very prominent topic globally, and there's a lot of demand in organizations coming from the board, C-suite, and even stakeholders to understand what's being done in regards to security, not only to ensure continuity of service, but protect stakeholder information. So that's another reason why organizations may look to adopt new security tools as a way to show some sort of value when those questions are asked. The other is responding to changes to regulations. So when new regulations come out or there's been changes to existing regulations, that might also push organizations to make a move on acquiring and adopting new security tools. A good example is with the recent changes to the New Zealand Privacy Act, where we now have mandatory breach reporting. So putting certain security tools in place might help to reduce the risk of an organization becoming a breach victim and having to disclose details of any breaches they face. And ultimately, this is a common one, but it's a shift in the way that organizations are doing business by moving the way they used to do business into a more digital storefront, whether it's moving to a website or shifting the way they do things into the cloud, and looking at adopting new security tools as a way to protect them in this new realm that they may not be familiar with in the initial stages. So there's a lot of benefits to adopting security tools. And one of them is that it can assist you to reduce cost and gain efficiencies quickly. So organizations may not have had the capability in-house or may have had little capability before to help with dealing with security threats, but having a tool in place can help to free those resources up to focus those efforts elsewhere, and you have a tool that's managing that a lot better for you. The other is around dealing with risk. So depending on what security tools you implement in your environment, you'll be able to mitigate specific security threats associated with those tools. And having a tool in place can help to reduce the likelihood and impacts that certain threats might present to your environment. The other is that some security tools can help you to detect security threats early as well, before they actually become a big menace for you. So having a tool in place to pick those up for you and help you deal with them can help you deal with things later on going forward. The other is we have security tools now, and one of the common reasons we're using them is to secure our information. So we've been sitting in the information age for a few years now, and with the volume of information we're sitting in, we're starting to look at security tools to help us to control what's happening to our data, where it is, where it should be going, where it shouldn't be going. And this is one you've probably heard a lot about today, but some security tools are helping us to deal with managing our identities as well. And some larger organizations have to traverse through multiple identities coming from different areas, not just within their own organization itself, but also dealing with third-party identities, customer identities as well. And finally, security tools can help us to manage compliance requirements as well. Some organizations may want to look at complying with a security standard, might be looking to the New Zealand Information Security Manual as an example, or looking to comply with an ISO standard. So implementing certain tools might help to build some of those controls straight away to get some of those quick wins in compliance. So how did this term silver bullet become associated with security tools? So a security tool, a silver bullet, is known as one single solution that can solve any significant problem. It can't be beaten, it can't be destroyed. And so that's been a term that's been commonly associated with security tools. So if I implement a security tool, I'm fully protected from the security threats that are out there to me. And that can be sometimes a dangerous perception to take if you're relying on the security tool on its own. And there have been cases where organizations have fallen victim to taking this thinking too quickly. And one of the reasons is that they may look at a new security tool and implement it, but they don't realize that it doesn't fully address the critical risks that they should be worried about. So a security tool may address a lot of very low risks and a high volume of them, but organizations should really be thinking about what are the key security risks that I'm worried about, and does the security tool address them adequately? The other is staying on top of vulnerabilities associated with that tool. So even if you have a security tool to protect yourself, what's protecting that security tool? How is security baked into that? And even though you might have new state-of-the-art security tools, there's nothing still stopping an attacker from trying to find a new way to break through that tool, regardless of whether it's new or it's old. So staying on top of that is absolutely key. The other is aligning any tools you get with your security strategies. So depending on the journey that you're on with security, some organizations may need to get the basics right first before thinking about adopting security tools. So when we're thinking about basics, we're thinking formalizing governance structures, policies, processes, procedures, and training staff. So getting those right up front can help you before you actually jump to getting a tool. The other is challenges with integrating security tools with existing technology. So even though you're introducing a new security tool into your environment, a lot of organizations are still sitting on legacy systems which have sort of built information over time and they're too valuable to remove. So making sure that the security tools are able to cater for those old at-risk systems is absolutely important. The other one is assuming that responsibility for managing those tools sits with the vendors. Sometimes organizations may not have the in-house capability to manage a tool, a security tool, so they'll acquire the services of an external vendor. And sometimes a common misperception that people take is that the vendor will manage everything security-wise associated with that tool, whether it be managing backups, whether it's patching the system, and also dealing with incidents. And not all vendors provide this as part of the service. And it may not be in contracts, and also it may not have been communicated or agreed upfront between an organization and the vendor. On the other side, an organization may have enough resources in-house to manage a security tool by themselves, but may not have trained staff, both those using the system and those maintaining it, on the right way to configure, set up, and use the security tool. And a security tool is only as good as the people using it. So if they're not trained right, you're not getting the best value out of the security tool itself. So these are a few cases where things have gone wrong, where organizations with security tools have fallen victim and seen those tools sort of lose their integrity. So you would have heard of SolarWinds last year, and I'm hoping no one from SolarWinds is inside here. But SolarWinds, so they provide monitoring tools where you can monitor your network, your applications, your servers. But last year, they hit the front page after they became a victim of a cyber attack, where hackers were able to compromise user accounts, get into SolarWinds' environment, and then use that as a way to get into the customers of SolarWinds networks. There's another one you might be familiar with FireEye, who provides cyber threat intelligence services. So CyberEye were also hit by a nation-state attack, where cyber attackers got into their environment and were actually able to steal their tools, their security tools. These are just a couple of examples where you might have a good security tool, which can protect you to some extent, but if the environment around it is not built in a way to support the tool, then you're really making that tool a liability as opposed to a valuable asset. So how can we get as close to that silver bullet as we can? So the way you do it is security tools are absolutely amazing, don't get me wrong, but they need to be supported the right way. And what I'm going to bring this to is one of the basics, which is around the information systems triad. So you've got technology, which is our security tool, but our security tool needs to be supported by competent people who know what they're doing, who are qualified and understand the way the tool needs to be used, and also robust and formal processes so that the tool can be used the right way and in accordance with good practices. And ultimately, you need a plan to bring all those three things together. So before even thinking about adopting the latest security tool, there's a few things that you should really think about before taking that step. One is to really understand your security landscape, your organization's security landscape in terms of where are you heading as a business over the next sort of 12 months, 3 years, 5 years? What are the current threats that impact that goal that you have? And what are the big risks that you need to be worried about? Based on that, you can start to think about where a security tool might be relevant and practical to implement into your environment to address those certain risks. The second is not just to jump onto the first tool that you hear about or you see. It's actually to do a market assessment and identify first what are your key business requirements, what do you need from a tool, how does that tool need to enable your business, and actually looking at what's out there. There might be one tool which can meet all your business requirements, or there might be a couple that meet it the best. But it's actually thinking about what does your business truly need from a tool, and which ones can effectively address that for you. The third is thinking about how that tool has been developed and actually challenging the vendors in terms of what standards they follow to make sure that the tool that you might procure from them has been built with security built at the front of mind. So actually understanding what standards does the vendor follow in terms of developing and maintaining those security tools and whether those align with sort of the security requirements you're looking for from a tool. And the other is to understand what is the support model before you decide to use the tool. So how much can I, as an organization, support the tool myself, and how much help do I need from the vendor? And actually establishing that upfront and determining who will do what, and also outlining your expectations from the service in terms of management. So it might be things like understanding what are the incident response priorities. So for a vendor, it might be 24 hours to respond to a priority 2 is relevant, whereas for you, you might expect them to do it a lot sooner. So getting those kind of things visible, agreed up front is really important when deciding how you're going to manage that security tool. Once you've actually got the tool, the thing that you need to check is that your existing processes for security, so your policies, your standards, your training and awareness regimes, they're all able to align with that tool. And if there's areas where the tool and your internal processes can't align, it might be making adjustments to cater for the tool in the right way. So making sure that, that the way that people use the tool, you've got documentation or guidance on how the do's and don'ts with that tool, just to guide secure and safe use of the tool in your environment. The other is training, and we've heard this a lot today, but like I said before, a tool is only as good as the people that use it. So making sure that staff or personnel not only using the tool, but those who are responsible for day-to-day management of the tool, actually understand how to use the tool, what purpose it's trying to achieve across the organization, and their involvement in making sure that that purpose is achieved are really important to get correct. The other is to make sure that that tool is patched and updated on time. So regardless of whether the tool's new, there'll always be bugs or fixes that the vendor might suggest or recommend. So it's really important to listen to and watch out for those messages and not to delay making those changes. So even waiting a couple of days still gives an attacker a couple of days in which they can try to exploit those weaknesses. So make sure not to delay those things. And you might have the security tool long term. So it's important to think about how you're going to maintain it going forward. And one is to make sure that if you do have agreement with vendors in terms of getting their support services, making sure that at any point in time that the way that they manage and support the solution remains in line with good security practices. One of the common ways that organizations do this is by putting a right to audit clause within contracts or SLAs, so that they can actually get independent assessments done to see whether their vendors have their own houses in order before deciding whether we renew use of the tool or whether we need to look elsewhere, so that they don't fall into a case like the SolarWinds or FireEye cases before. The other is to remediate potential vulnerabilities in that tool. So we're in an age where technology is developing very rapidly, so something that came out new yesterday will not be new 6 months or a year from now, and it may no longer be supported. So the security tool that you have in place attackers may find new ways to get in or find chinks in its armor. So it's important to keep on top of that, understand what are the vulnerabilities of this tool and how do I protect this in my wider environment. And going forward, you will have new systems or solutions introduced into your environment. So it's really important to make sure that any new security tools that you implement are able to cater for those new solutions that you've introduced, so that it's able to cover your whole ecosystem in terms of your technology and your environment. So my key message in summary is that there is no silver bullet, but there's a lot that you can do to get yourself as close to that sort of prospect as possible by not only just procuring a security tool, but actually making sure it's supported well by having the right people and the right processes and a plan to bring those together. Thank you. I open the floor to questions now if anyone has any.
Shami, are there any security tools out there that are close to a silver bullet?
No. If there were, we'd probably be out of a job, to be honest. Yeah, so I mean, it's very hard to say that because as sophisticated as technology is becoming, so are the attackers trying to get through. And with the way things are changing so much, it's really hard to say that a security tool is impenetrable for a long period of time. So I think it comes back to us doing our best to make sure that that tool can be as valuable to us in protecting us as possible by the way we use it, the way we support it, and also the way that we continue to support it going forward. And just also having that mindset about not assuming that it's going to be enough, because I think it's very hard for us as security practitioners to go to bed at night and think everything's secure or something that we have in our environment is secure. I think it's very hard for us to cross our hearts and say that. So I think we just got to do our best in terms of making sure that the technical aspects are supported well by the non-technical aspects which we can control from a business perspective. And I think that'll get us as close to having something along the lines of a silver bullet.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you very much, Shami.